My labor in Iceland was nothing like I had envisioned, nothing like I planned. And while that is definitely a big part of life, let me tell you something. It was a lot. It was a whirlwind. It was a wild ride. And I'm going to go into the details that I can remember, and also just into my recovery now, because I had to spend some days in the hospital. I could have spent an extra day, but I decided not to. And now that I'm at home and 7 days into being a mom, I, have a bit more perspective about it all, and also feel the energy to actually talk about it. The baby is sleeping on me right now, and you might have seen another video or see another video in the future where the baby is sleeping on me, because it's the only time I have to talk about this is in between feedings and resting and pumping and all of that jazz. So first and foremost, my initial plan was to have a natural vaginal birth at the birthing center. So Fæðingar Heimilið Reykjavíkur. And I'd been going there after a certain amount of midwife visits. So after I think like 36 weeks or so, you can start going, or 32 weeks. I can't remember exactly the time frame. You can start going to there instead of my regular health center. And that was great. The midwives everywhere are great, including my regular health center. I just wanted to be more familiar with the, of course, birthing center in Reykjavik in terms of those midwives. So going there was quite the experience in terms of the place is beautiful. It is so like a warm hug. That's what it feels like. And the rooms they don't look anything like a hospital. The idea is for you to feel like you are almost giving birth at home. And I enjoyed that vibe. And I was taking a hypnobirthing class as well, just to prepare myself for a natural birth and breathing and mindset, all of that. So what happened is we found out the baby is sitting upright at 36 weeks. And this alerted the midwife that was seeing me that day to be like, okay, we need to think about getting this baby turned. And I did make a video that people have watched already, or some people have seen already, about being really nervous about doing the ECV. I didn't want to do it initially. And then when I thought about it, I was like, I want to give every opportunity possible for our child to be able to have a natural vaginal birth, which has less potential complications. And so I was like, okay, gonna do that. Did the ECV, it was not successful. This little cutie was like, no, I'm not turning. That is not how I'm planning to enter the world. So figure out something else. And I was like, okay. And then we're, finding out that with a breech birth in Iceland, at least, there is a criteria in which they allow for you to have a breech birth if you meet it. So I had to get an x-ray of my pelvis. I had to get an ultrasound of the baby to make sure that her size was not too big in terms of giving a vaginal birth with her breeched. And all of that turned out to be fine, meaning my pelvis wise, it was, I guess, wide enough or whatever it was they were measuring to be able to birth her. And then size wise, she was not, at least according to her estimate, 4 kilograms yet. She was like 3.4. Come to find out, she was way less than that. She was more like 3.2 kilos when she was born. But either way, the whole point is that she technically wasn't too big. And if I did not go into spontaneous birth before 41 weeks, they were going to induce me. So there was all this like happening. My brain's like spinning, like literally nothing feels like it's in my control. And I was very emotional. It's the first time in my pregnancy that I was the most emotional. I was very calm throughout for the most part. Maybe I can count on one hand, how many times I cried during my pregnancy, because I just felt so good. And I did have a time in my first trimester, to be fair, where I was super tired and I had to just like lay down for almost like a month from exhaustion. But after that, I was going to the gym. I went to the gym up until the day before I went into labor. So I was very much feeling great, and the baby was feeling great, always healthy. When we did the ultrasounds, we had way more doctor's visits. And ultrasounds than a normal birth or normal pregnancy because of what was going on, checking in with midwives. My blood iron levels had lowered, and I had to do all this stuff. But going into my spontaneous birth, it's so funny, or spontaneous labor, it's so funny that I had joked that I think the baby will be born on October 24th, mainly because that is the day of the 50th anniversary in which the historic women's protest. So women in Iceland in 1975, October 24th, they walked out of their homes, they walked out of their jobs because of lack of equal pay and equal treatment, respect of the work that they and value that they bring to society. And so 90% of women walked out, and men were left to fend for themselves and to feed their children and to figure out childcare, all that stuff. And it was a huge thing. And so this year's the 50th anniversary of that. And I was like, wouldn't it be hilarious if the baby is born on that day? Because first of all, like around 80% of the healthcare workers in Iceland are women, and there'd be a big walkout. Now, I know there wouldn't be, all the healthcare workers wouldn't walk out, but the point is that I just thought, the day that it would be probably potentially most challenging would be that day. And also historic, right? Like, why not have a baby born on a historic day? So actually ended up, I guess, the baby thinking it was a great idea too, because it was literally midnight. Yes, that I went on October 24th, that I went into having contractions that were very intense. And yeah, I mean, I expected the contractions to hurt. I have been doing breathing exercises, not only for the birthing process, but also for the fact that, like, Wim Hof, she's sleeping but making noises. Wim Hof going into like icy cold baths and all this other jazz, So like for me, the breathing stuff was really normal, but these contractions were abnormally timed and crazy intense, to the point where even though they were not regular, like the midwife had told us to, I was like, I have to go to the hospital. I don't know what's going on, but I have to go to the hospital. This is not good. No. And the hospital was like, yeah, you can come. So we drove there, and I was in like biker shorts, a crop top, my dad's sweaters. My dad unfortunately died when I was 20 years old, but I wanted to have him with me. There's something physical of his that I've had for years since he passed away, and like some slides that I wear because my feet had been swollen. And we get there to the hospital, and on the way even, I had to have my boyfriend stop the car because I was in so much pain. I had to get out and walk around for the contractions. And when I arrived to the hospital, they let me know that I'm like 67 centimeters already dilated. And I was like, whoa. So I'm glad that I came, because it was clear that I was very much farther along than I had imagined. And by the time they had even finished doing the examination just to see where I was, I went from 6 to 7 centimeters dilated to then almost 8. So yeah, it was moving quickly in the beginning. But then I stayed around 8 for hours, just writhing in pain, screaming in pain. I was trying so hard, breathing through it. But I legitimately felt like a wounded animal. Like, it was just incredible. And they think because of her being breached and sitting up, and she was sitting up very high, like she was never descending down, that it's possible that the way the contractions were, that it was just incredibly intense, more intense than what had been at least my expectation. Most of the videos that I watched about birthing had been like, the hypnobirthing in particular, like they're very chill, like people were breathing, yeah, they're in pain, but it's like, just like, I'm in the bathtub. And I was like, I'm expecting that. And it's like, no, I'm screaming. The hospital, the midwives, everybody was very concerned. And this went on for 4 or 5 hours of me every time I had a contraction, which were only a few minutes apart, crazy spikes of pain. And eventually I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. I hadn't slept in 24 hours because I was about to go to bed when the contractions started. And I'd gone to the gym, on Thursday. So I'd gotten up early and done all this stuff and have been fixing up the house. I was, vacuuming because I was like nesting and everything. And now I was like in labor that very next morning. Needless to say, I was very much in pain and got to a point, even though it took hours, because time actually stood still. I couldn't have told you that it took them much time, but my mom and my boyfriend were both there, and they were like, yeah, it was like 5 or 6 hours that you were just screaming whenever you had contractions, which were very close to each other. And I finally was like, I need an epidural, please just give me some relief. And so the anesthesiologist came in, and that process is not fun, by the way. of them sticking a needle in your spine, because even though you're having contractions, you can't move because that is very dangerous. And I was just like at all, and they're like, yeah, you can't move during the epidural, and you can't move once we lay you on your back. In order for that to take like an effect, you have to have your legs still and even with your hips or whatever, so it goes in both legs evenly. And I was like, oh my gosh. So they gave me these balls, these spiky balls that I was holding on to and just like squeezing the crap out of and yelling but not moving, like, oh, incredible. Well, the crazy thing is, the first epidural, when they put it in, it didn't work properly. So then they called in a specialist, and I thought to myself, what do you mean a specialist? Were you the specialist? Like, what did I miss here? And it was very tough to have to do that process all over again. The second time it did work though, and I actually have a clip because I was so relieved once the pain stopped and I was laying in bed and I felt like a normal person because I couldn't talk to people. Like, my boyfriend, my mom, they were all like, oh, can we help you? And I was like, stop talking to me. Like, I am in pain. Stop, please. Just please don't talk to me. Let me just figure this out. I'm trying so hard. And I remember even one of the nurses asked me when they were trying to like do the epidural, and I had to sit still, and she was just like, so where are you from? And I was like, I don't want to talk about that right now. Right? Like, I was just like, I'm having a contraction. I know you're trying to distract me in a good way, but I just can't. I learned a lot about myself when it comes to dealing with pain and these sorts of things. I go within myself. That is a part of my process. It has nothing to do with anybody else or not wanting help, but just more of that's just, my way of coping. And they talk about people who are like cats. Cats tend to go away and they deal with their like birth, in secret, and then like come back or whatever. That was me. That was kind of like my attitude around it. So yeah, I have a clip here actually of me on the epidural, like after it actually started working, and a little bit of the room that you can see. So I'm at Landspitalet. Holly over there is sleeping. Poor guy. He worked a full day, and my contractions started at midnight in 10. So my mom in the background talking, and I'm in the hospital bed. And yeah, there's a lot that I will talk about, but those contractions were not something I ever expected. And I'm really tired, so I'm gonna take a nap. Hopefully I did get an epidural. I wasn't planning on doing that. Here we are, no regrets. And I know many of you have done natural birth. That was something I really, really, really wanted to do. I've honestly never screamed that loud in my life. I'm just gonna be honest. And all I could think is like, I'm really excited for our baby to come. And I also want to punch everyone in the face and run through walls or something, anything for this to stop. So yeah, this is oof. And I haven't slept in almost 24 hours now, like an actual solid amount of time. So I'm gonna take a nap. But wow, oh yeah, let me show the room, because this is at least to give you an idea of what the pregnancy rooms look like in Landspitalet. You can't take a tour of them beforehand because there's so many different pregnancies that are happening that they don't really have the time to be like, here, reserved room for you to come check out. And so I'm gonna do that, just for those who are curious. At that time, I think it was like 7 o'clock in the morning or so, and they asked me if I still wanted to do like a vaginal birth, like go for it, because I was 9 centimeters dilated, even though the baby had again not descended down. And I was like, yeah, we can do it. So then they gave me something to induce labor contractions again that actually overrided whatever the epidural was doing. So I was having contractions, not as intense as before, but still relatively intense. It did not work for the baby coming down. And they were like, look, we're gonna have to consider doing a C-section, okay? And I was like, you know what? This was something I didn't want to do, but here we are, and I'm not here to fight it. If we think that's the best for the health of me and the baby, especially the baby, cut me up. Let's just do it. And I asked like they could make the incision as low as possible, and they were like, yeah, of course. And so I was like, okay. fine, we're having an emergency C-section. And they were like, oh, but you have some time. And I was like, okay, how much time? And they're like, a half an hour. I was like, what? That's not a lot of time. But I guess in hospital time frames, a half an hour, like emergency is immediate, whereas like, you know, emergency, whereas this is considered emergency C-section because it wasn't at all planned, and we're doing all the things to try and like have a vaginal birth. And actually the doctor's face, the surgeon's face, I could see that, you know, she was trying to break it to me in a way that made me feel like, okay, this is not a bad thing, but also like, you know, I understand if this is like hard for you. And I was like, I've gone through the hard stuff, okay? Like this is for me a relief to a degree, even though I know that someone's waking up, even though I know that the recovery would be hard, but this is where we're at. And decided, you know, we're gonna wheel me into the operating room, which I felt like I was on a TV show. I was like, oh, this is so interesting, because I've never, at least from my memory, I've had surgery one time before, but I was already pretty much knocked out. Whereas this is like you're awake, and everyone was so nice. I just have to also give that big props to the staff at the hospital, for of course the C-section itself, for recovery. Amazing, phenomenal. It was so calming how sweet everybody was, asking me different questions, making sure I was comfortable. And just overall, like, even when the baby came out, and I have some photos, and I will clip in some photos. I'll have the time frame up here, so if you don't want to see like blood or things like that, you can skip past that portion of the video. But there was a midwife there who took photos of the C-section, like the baby coming out, so that we could have him. Like, I gave her my phone, and she was so great. And it was just like amazingly sweet. Like everybody, anesthesiologist, pediatrician, surgeon, midwives, nurses, like you could tell they all just wanted this to go well. And when the baby came out, they were like, oh, she's a little doll. Like they were just so sweet. And she has a ton of hair. And that's like jet black hair, super cute, a literal little doll. And I was just like crying. Me and Hale were just bursting into tears. About at one point, because he's a musician, I asked him to sing a lullaby to me before they started going in for the operating. And it was just, now recovery, whew, in the hospital, I'm gonna tell you, this pain of, and I'm sure people who have had a C-section, possibly even an emergency C-section, apparently that's different than to a degree, than when it is already planned. But yeah, lots of drugs, lots of laying down. I couldn't get out of bed for 24 hours. Like I literally wasn't allowed. So I had a catheter and like all this stuff. But I had my baby, and she's extremely healthy, doing great. We even had our 5-day checkup recently, and that went extremely well. She has recovered more than her birth weight, which is amazing. And heartbeat, all of those things, all the vitals. And a midwife, which I love. So Edith is my midwife, who is fantastic. And you have midwife visits home. So I think it's like 7 visits out of 10 days or something like this, the first 10 days. And yeah, so she comes to our house to check up on us and the baby, and I'm breastfeeding. Well, I'm pumping to get my milk supply up to be able to full-time breastfeed and all that jazz. So it has been a whirlwind, like I said. A perfect, chaotic, amazing experience. And there are days where I've felt like in a total haze. Today I felt really great, so that's why I've been filming. And I just feel so lucky and extraordinarily like excited. If people are wondering about why I don't have like the baby's face in the video, it's because I want to protect her privacy as much as possible. So don't be surprised that you don't see the baby's face in videos much like in the future and stuff. Maybe here or there, but overall that is not like the focus, is to have content where the baby is like splayed all over all things Iceland. I think, you know, it's nice for her to be able to grow up and have that privacy. So yeah, there might be some of the back of her head or body or stuff where we're out doing adventures, because she's definitely coming with me on adventures for sure. But I hope everybody understands, and I thank people for those who do understand that, because it's important to me to protect her as much as I can. So that was my story. If you have questions, feel free to let me know. If you need me to elaborate on anything, I could do other videos about this. But that was kind of the gist of my birthing experience, and intense, amazing, memorable for sure, and something that, you know, helped me to learn more about myself, as well as get a real taste of the system. I've gone through everything when it comes to giving birth here and the potential, so it was fascinating. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.